All right. Welcome to the algorithm, the pro football analysis. We're coming up on week 11. Last week was a lot of upsets, went 6-8, but that happens. So let's go ahead and start looking at week 11. So last week I introduced Bayesian analysis, and it's tricky. I've been trying to figure out exactly for a number of years now. I've been doing this for quite a while. I love using Bayesian analysis, but one of the hard things is understanding what some of the output means. And one of the things that I trickled on found this year is I've always been trying to work out how to balance the difference in what the model is seeing in real life and how to do that. And so one of the things that I discovered is if I go through and at the end of every week compare what the model says compared to real life throughout the entire season, I can kind of start to see where some of the biases are, and then using this output uh, that you see here, and I'll walk through what the titles are. And so um, real quickly, as I go through and I look at the data, you can see that there are some teams that the model will overestimate or underestimate. And so that's what up here represents is sometimes if you have two teams that the model underestimates, then I would use the point spread here, and that's where I went highlighted to say that's what it shows. If it's the model overestimates, then they're not going to play as well. And then you can have the case where one team is projected to overperform and the other underperform, and vice versa. Um, Again, this is something that I've been looking at for years. It's been difficult for me to really figure out how to leverage this. One of the ways I've tried to leverage it in the past was taking consideration injuries, weather, home field, and that was always kind of difficult. And I think that what I'm trying this time is a better approach, which is to consider everything within the model itself and look at the biases. So from here on out, so I've left the screen up for a while, um, and this here just has the point spreads, and I highlighted the ones that where the categories would meet. So the model would say in this case here is it's been overestimating both of these teams. So if I take that into consideration, I would expect Green Bay to win. That's how you read this. From here on out, what I'm going to present is my interpretation of the data. So you're going to have the raw model data, you have the Bayesian output, and then you're going to have what my selection is going to be. So that's what we're going to do from here on out. Okay, so Tennessee versus Green Bay. Green Bay is favored to win by 3. I think that that is overestimating Green Bay. They might win. I have a hard time believing that they're going to win by more than 3, so I am picking Tennessee. And in this case here, when I look at Green Bay, or when I look at the Bayesian algorithm, is it saying, yeah, even under the certain with the adjusted, is it still going to be a really close game? I can see how the home field advantage is probably what's leaning that way. We'll take let's take a look at the overall when we look at their rankings and such. Both teams have their pros and cons. I think Tennessee overall is a slightly more consistent team across the board, particularly when it comes to the rushing. I think you could look at this and say that their rushing is only 14th, but considering that everyone knows they're going to rush and they rush as well as they do, I'm not surprised. But then again, anytime you have Aaron Rodgers on a team, magic can happen. So let's look and see what the data says, and indeed showing that Tennessee should outrun them by quite a bit. And you can see some explosiveness here or the upward capability, I should say, of Green Bay over here. But again, it's showing more that Tennessee should be able to control the ball, control more of the pace of the play. And quite frankly, I think Tennessee had a strong defense and been controlling the ball. So uh, I don't think Green Bay is going to cover that point spread. I have heard other analysts saying that Tennessee's had some bruising weeks here in the past couple of weeks, so that'll be hard to play this Thursday. And there is some thought to that. That is a pretty conventional. That is conventional wisdom. So we'll see. Next game is Carolina versus Baltimore. I do think Baltimore is going to win. I just have a hard time believing it's going to be by 13 points necessarily. Carolina, they're not a great team. And Baltimore has a lot of explosiveness, and they've got some really strong points over here. But when I look at the just some of the other attributes, I think that the 6 point point spread is probably, I'm sorry, 13 point spread is probably a bit too much, and I'm inclined to just take the underdog in that one there. And so let's take a look at. As a matter of fact, when I look at the the Bayesian aspect, is it saying that it should be a close game in that regard? That Baltimore is still favored, but that in all cases Baltimore should win. But if the model adjustments are correct, it's just saying it shouldn't be by 13 points. And so then when we look at the run pass charts, we see that Baltimore, again, I expect them to win. They should be able to run the ball. It's just showing that both that they should be fairly equal with their passing. And Carolina, they don't have a bad rushing game at all. That's certainly going to slow the game down and reduce some of that overall point scoring potentially. We can see how that goes. Baltimore. Overall, I think Baltimore is a more explosive offense, but when you look at the numbers here, it doesn't really show that. And so Carolina, they've not been as poor, I think, as most people would expect. But again, I think 13 points is just a bit too much, but I do expect Baltimore to win. So we'll see how that goes. All right, Chicago versus Atlanta. So in this case here, is it showing that the model overestimates both of these teams? And so with that, Atlanta is favored to win by 3. The model is showing that Chicago should win. And with the adjusted Bayesian output, is it saying that Chicago should win by closer to 7? So we'll see how that goes. Atlanta's got a lot of really good numbers when you look over here at their capability. They've been playing a lot better lately. That notwithstanding, so Atlanta has got some good numbers. They've been playing pretty well. They have lost their last 2 games, so they haven't necessarily been lighting it up in the win-loss column. And Chicago, they managed to eke out a defeat from the jaws of victory in this last week, but nonetheless, they've got some attributes. We'll go through, look at the run pass charts. This run pass over here, or I'm sorry, this running game over here for Chicago is just off the charts. Both teams are going to be high running, low passing. Oftentimes that can lead to lower scoring games. Not always, as we saw in this last week. Both teams have quite a bit of explosiveness. They've got great running games. Neither have really particularly good passing games, which can also lead to a low scoring game as well. It is a point spread of 3, so we'll see how that goes. But overall, I think Chicago's been playing a bit better. Buffalo versus Cleveland. So when we look at this, I think Cleveland has been underwhelming this year. As I've said for the last, I think, 3 or 4 weeks in a row, Buffalo should be the best team in the entire NFL, but they play to the level of their competition, which whenever you see a line of 8 points and you have a team like Buffalo that just seems to find ways to underperform, it's sometimes hard to take that. But then it's, as you can see, the model is showing that they should win by about 8, maybe a little bit more. And then when I look at the Bayesian output, it is saying that they should win by a lot more. But see how that turns out when you look at the charts. Buffalo, again, you got Josh Allen. He has the ability to light it up. He also has the ability to throw a lot of sacks. I'm sorry, a lot of interceptions, and he manages to do them at the worst possible time. That's the most frustrating part. Um, Cleveland, uh, uh, they're going to have a running game, as we can see over here. Not much of a passing game at all. Overall, Buffalo has a pretty strong defense. Um, and so I would expect to see some sacks. I would expect to see some interceptions over here. And if they can manage to play the level that they should be able to play, Buffalo should be able to handle them pretty well. But that is always a it's always fun to watch. I'll say that. All right, Giants versus Detroit. So I'm so the I'm sorry. Yeah, Giants versus Detroit versus the Lions. The Giants are favored to win by 3. The model has them as slightly under that. When I look at the Bayesian output, it is saying that taking into consideration is it should be closer to 3 points. So I'm going to be inclined to take the adjusted model. Um, and it's very close. Overall, I think the Giants have been playing really well this year. Detroit, hopefully they can improve next year. They've got some really strong pieces for sure. They just haven't really been there consistently this year. They certainly have disappointed a lot of betting hopes this year when they managed to show up and play really. So let's go ahead and take a look at their numbers here. Detroit overall, yeah, I got to give it to Jared Goff. He's been playing really well overall. They've got a really strong passing game. They've been consistent. He's been doing a good job of uh, of not throwing interceptions. He's not getting sacked. You can't say that about the Giants. He's been getting sacked. Daniel Jones, and then likewise, he's doing better at controlling the ball, protecting the ball from last year, but he's still not quite protecting as well as he should. And Detroit, they've got some explosiveness, but again, they've got some problems, and overall, the model is saying that New York is just overall going to control the ball game, control more of the ball, and should come out on top. And the models are suggesting that the betting line is pretty close. All right, New Orleans versus Rams. Again, I am from LA. I am a Rams fan, and it always stinks to recommend betting against the team that you root for, but that notwithstanding, New Orleans is favored by 3.5. The model is saying that New Orleans should win by quite a bit more than that, and I'm going to take them in that case. All of the raw stats over here are showing as much as well. And then when I look at the Bayesian um, adjustment for it as well. Is it saying that overall that the model is tends to overestimate New Orleans and underestimate the Rams, and so the Bayesian is saying is it should be closer to that 3.5 point uh, uh, line as well. Overall, the Rams have really stunk this year. They've shown very little life. I also don't know whether or not Matthew Stafford's going to be playing, and they're going on the road. So all of those tends to lead me to believe the raw numbers and the Bayesian adjustment as well. And when you look at the run pass charts, again, it's really hard. You know, when you look at what the Rams do, a lot of these numbers, these passing numbers, seem to come in uh, garbage minutes. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying to use that Bayesian method to compare observed results versus the model results, because there's a lag in what the model can show, and it can over or underrepresent how teams really do. So, but with that, I think New Orleans is favored, and I'm going to the model suggests that the line is pretty close. Patriots are favored by 3. And with the Bayesian adjustment, it's saying it's closer to about 2.5. So overall, I would say that the prediction is and the model, and then the adjusted model, they're all fairly close. I don't have any reason to think that the prediction, the line, and the model are all pretty accurate. The Jets have actually been playing pretty well this year, as our record demonstrates. And the Patriots, quite frankly, I think the Jets have been playing better than the Patriots overall. They have similar records and similar stats, and indeed, this the model shows that it should be a close game. When we look at the raw numbers, the Jets, they've got a lot of explosiveness over here, as we can see. And then when I come over here, you can also see that the Jets have a hard time protecting their quarterback, have a hard time protecting the ball. And that's one of the most frustrating things you can see in a game, in a team. And I think the model reflects this, is that if the Jets can control the ball, they are going to beat that point spread. But that's always a big if. Overall, I would say that when you look at these numbers here, the teams are pretty equal, except for the fact that the Jets can't protect the quarterback and they can't protect the ball. When you have those two things, you're gonna it is you can expect that the team that's favored to win should win in that case. Philadelphia versus Indianapolis. So Philly is favored by 7. The model has Philly favored by a little bit more than that. Philly does have the model does tend to I think overestimate, is what my feeling is, tends to overestimate Philly. And when I look at the Bayesian analysis, it's saying that it overestimates both Philadelphia and and Indianapolis. And so then when I look at the adjusted point spread, is it downward revises from 11.1 to about 10, which still says that Philly, which is still in excess of what we see there. And I think that that's also reasonable as well. Philadelphia really is a very strong team, even though they did not play well this last week. Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh. Cincinnati is favored by 3.5 points. The model is saying that Cincinnati is favored by 7.7, so we'll call that 7.5. And when I look at the Bayesian output, is it saying that both teams should overperform from what the model says. And so with that, is it saying that Cincinnati should win closer to this number here? And again, when you look at overall Pittsburgh, they've got 3 wins this year. They're rebuilding, and Cincinnati has been playing better throughout as the season progresses. And you just look at some of the raw rankings over here. Cincinnati is just fundamentally a team. Then when we come over here to the run pass charts, Cincinnati has a lot of explosiveness. That's going to be hard to keep up with. Pittsburgh, they've been having a hard time keeping control of the ball. And you just look at this explosiveness down here with Cincinnati. They're getting better. They're good. They're getting better. And that's kind of what you want to see if your team that's a good team, that they're getting better as the year goes. And that's what the number is showing. And so that's either way you slice it, I would take Cincinnati. All right, Washington versus the Texans. So this one here, notice, is it saying that Houston is favored by the model? Overall, both teams are kind of poor, but I would definitely say that you've been seeing. I mean, just look at this right here, though. Washington has won, was that 4 of their last 5, whereas Houston's lost all of their last 5. So there's a trend coming on there, and so the reason why I'm also taking Washington in spite of the raw data is when I look at the adjusted data from the Bayesian analysis, is it has Washington winning by about 7. So it's basically the model is saying, and what my eyeball test tells me is that these last 5 games, Washington has improved so much more and is trending that direction, whereas Houston has just been playing consistently low. That's what we have over here. And so Washington definitely needed to build in this early time, and they had some close games in some of those early games, especially right here. So they've gotten quite a bit better. When you come over here and look at the various charts here, really not a whole lot to see. They look pretty equal when you come over here. I do see that Houston, they definitely have some explosiveness. Um, and uh, uh, like I said, when you look at the raw numbers, Houston's stack up better than that of Washington. But this is one to where my eye test, the Bayesian results, all of that line up to say that I'm going to be taking Washington in that case. All right, we're getting there. Dallas is favored by 1.5 points. The model says Dallas should win by more than 4. And then the raw numbers are saying that as well. I think overall Dallas is a better team. Minnesota certainly they've been having a fantastic season, so that notwithstanding, um, it can be hard to choose those. When I look at the Bayesian analysis, it basically says that it revises Dallas downward to 1.7. So with that, I'm still going to take that. When we come over here and look at some of the raw numbers, Minnesota's having a hard time keeping their quarterback up. But again, offensive lines, they can change rather quickly. It can be hard to see that if you see a returning starter who had perhaps missed 4 or 5 games, particularly if it's something like a center or a left tackle. But Dallas, they also had their quarterback return after missing the first 4 or 5 games. So it can be, both teams are good. 1.5 point spread looks about right. I think Dallas is more likely to win in that case. So it'll be a fun game to watch. Denver versus the Raiders. Both of these teams stink. And so it's always difficult to take this. The model says the Raiders should lose, saying Denver should win. My model has tended to overestimate Denver the entire season. But at the same time, Russell Wilson is a phenomenal quarterback, but they have not been playing well this year. And then likewise, the Raiders should be a lot better team than what their record reflects. So which of these teams is really going to show up? And furthermore, they're also conference rivals. So with that, it's always a challenge to pick which team is going to be less incompetent. In this case here, I'm going to take the under. But again, I realize that Vegas is really struggling under, I think, the new coaching staff this year, and I think that they're underperforming. But with that, they certainly have the players to be able to do better. They just haven't been, and I think that's also what the Bayesian adjustment says, which is to say it's uh, uh, they're better than what the model shows. And I think most people would say that the Raiders have under performed compared to what their expectations were. But with that, when you look at the raw numbers, uh, 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 they're going to lie to us a little bit. I won't say lie, but overall, all the numbers, as with what the raw model says, is Denver should be better, should win according to the model. They're going to pass better. We can see some explosiveness over here. Um, Overall, really not much to see in terms of the sacks. They're both pretty equal over here with controlling the ball, not nearly as explosive. Vegas is over here. That's what the model is saying. But again, the model has biases, and this is one to where the model has tended to underestimate Vegas and overestimate Denver. So we'll see what you bet. Good luck with whichever way you do. This is, I think, a tough game if you're doing a pool, and if you are betting just out in the open, this is a game I would not bet. All right, Kansas City versus the Chargers. Kansas City is favored by 5.5 points. The model is saying the Chargers, or I'm sorry, saying Kansas City is favored by 5.5, and the model is saying that they're favored by about 9. And again, that also matches with the point spread, with the points estimates over here. Overall, the Chargers, they're playing very poorly this year. That's the fact that they have a winning record is a miracle. But they do have a very good team. They've certainly got some very good players, but I think that they've been playing very poorly and been squeaking out some last minute wins. but anytime I found that uh, that Kansas City, they can just pour it on, particularly against a conference rival. The model typically this year has been underestimating Kansas City and overestimating the Chargers. And so with that, the Bayesian analysis skews the Kansas City point spread by quite a bit more than 5.5. So with that, all indications are pointing that Kansas City should win. And again, when we come over here, when we look at Kansas City, we're going to see um, overall better control of the ball. Well, let me phrase that: better protection of the quarterback. Perhaps not any better control of the ball, but you're going to see a little bit more explosiveness, and then the the passing game and then the running game is just a bit more consistent for Kansas City as well. All right, last game. So San Francisco is favored by 8. The model is also suggesting that San Francisco should win by a lot. And then when I do the Bayesian analysis, it's saying San Francisco should win no matter what. But in this case here, is it's saying that the model has more dramatically underestimated Arizona. So with that, is it downward revised the point spread to more like 7 points? So, that might be 6 points. It's hard for me to read right now. But the point is I think San Francisco is a stronger team. 8 points is a big point spread. San Francisco has also added some capabilities here with in the last couple weeks. So um, overall, San Francisco is a very physical team. And as a fan of football, I love watching that. When we come over to the raw numbers here, we're going to show that San Francisco overall should just be able to run and pass the ball quite a bit more so. Kyler Murray is always an interesting one to watch. He can certainly change games, provided, of course, that he's not getting sacked 10 times a game. And a team like San Francisco, that's why that number is so high. It's because San Francisco's got a very dominant defense. And it's also showing that you can expect to see some interceptions and maybe not as many fumbles, but more dramatically, if you look over here, San Francisco's got an explosive offense and Arizona has not. So, all right, that concludes this week for week 11 predictions of the algorithm. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Good luck with your bets, and we'll record the show next week, see how we did.